My ex's sister openly laughed at my divorce, saying, "You were always too ambitious for him." Then my phone lit up with a message from her brother. "I made a mistake. Can we talk?" I just held it up to her face. I married a man named Callan when I was 29. We met at the University of Oregon. I was on the fast track, double majoring, internships, career fairs, and he was, well, an artist. Literally. He studied art history, was gentle, soft-spoken, with this charming slouch that made him seem both relaxed and untouchable. At first, we balanced each other out. I'd come home stressed from work, and he'd light candles, pour wine, and play vinyls while we cooked. He reminded me to breathe. I reminded him to file his taxes. For a while, it worked. But here's the thing. When you're a woman with ambition, people assume you're trying to prove something, even when you're just trying to secure your future, trying to be someone your younger self would be proud of. Callan wasn't threatened at first. He encouraged me, or he said he did. But when I started making more than him, when my job started requiring more hours, more travel, something shifted, and his family didn't help. Callan's sister, Sienna, was the kind of person who made everything feel like a competition. We weren't friends, but I played nice because that's what you do when you're building a family. She had that effortless, curated lifestyle thing going, Pinterest-perfect brunches, designer coats, all that. She worked in real estate, thanks to her dad's connections. Meanwhile, I was working late nights, chasing clients, and carving my way up the ladder the old-fashioned way. Sienna always made these little comments. Subtle, but sharp. "Not everyone's trying to make a partner before 40, Alyssa." Or, "You're so type A, do you even sleep?" The one that hit hardest. At a dinner once, just me, Callan, his parents, and Sienna, she looked over her wine glass and said, "You know, it's not natural for a woman to be the alpha in a marriage." I laughed it off then. But those things add up, don't they? The real unraveling started the year I got promoted to VP at my firm. I was 37. It was a big deal, 10 years of relentless work, weekends lost to strategy decks, holidays cut short for conference calls. Callan didn't even congratulate me. I remember coming home that night, exhausted but proud. I thought maybe he'd have flowers, or takeout, or just a hug. Instead, he was painting. Didn't even look up when I told him. "Wow," he said, "that's great." That night we argued. I don't even remember the exact words, just the weight behind them. He said he felt invisible, that I didn't make room for him, that I was steamrolling through life and dragging him with me. I asked him, "Did you ever want to come with me, or were you just watching from the sidelines?" He didn't answer. 3 weeks later, he was gone, moved out. Left a note and a set of keys on the kitchen counter. That's how I found out he'd met someone else. A yoga instructor named Naomi. She was 26, taught breathwork, wore flowy pants. I didn't cry. I just packed a weekend bag and booked a hotel downtown. I stared at the ceiling of that hotel room for 2 nights straight, the silence so loud it throbbed in my ears. I filed for divorce the next Monday. No fault. No lawyers screaming, just a clean, cold ending. Sienna called me 2 months into the process. I thought it was about paperwork. Instead, she laughed. "I mean, Alyssa," she said, "everyone saw it coming. You were always too ambitious for him. Men need to feel like men. You don't leave them much room for that." That sentence. That exact sentence stuck with me for months. Years passed, slowly and then all at once. I moved into a smaller condo, closer to downtown. My firm expanded and I began managing a whole new division. I made new friends. I went to therapy. I even tried dating again, awkward first dates, short-lived flings, longer conversations over wine and shared disappointment. And then one afternoon last fall, I was invited to a client's wine tasting event out in Dundee Hills. Fancy, but intimate. A converted barn with fairy lights, soft jazz, and laughter that felt easy. I wore this simple black wrap dress and heels I hadn't touched since my promotion party. I was sipping a Pinot Noir when I felt someone watching me. It was Sienna. She was standing near the catering table, arm hooked around the elbow of a tall man I didn't recognize, her fiancé, probably. She looked the same, only more manicured. She walked over, that smile already forming. "I didn't know you still lived in Portland," she said. "Still working 70-hour weeks?" I smiled, sipped my wine. "Only when I feel like it," she laughed. "Still doing that ambition thing, huh? Must get lonely at night." That was when it happened. My phone buzzed in my hand. A message from Callan. Callan, I made a mistake. Can we talk? I stared at it for a second, half expecting it to disappear like a dream. Then I turned the screen to her. No words, just silence, the expression on her face, worth everything. She stared at the screen, then at me like she'd seen a ghost. I gave her a small nod, smiled, and turned away. I didn't gloat. I didn't feel triumphant. What I felt was clean, free. I never replied to him. Not then, not later. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't read his other messages. Naomi left, I messed everything up. I miss our life. I didn't appreciate you. I didn't understand what I had. Please. But some doors, once closed, need to stay closed. And this time I had the strength to keep them that way. After that wine tasting, things began to shift in me, almost imperceptibly at first. You'd think it would feel like some great cinematic moment, holding up that message to Sienna's face like a power move in a courtroom drama. But it wasn't that clean. It was subtle, like a slow exhale after years of holding your breath. That night, I drove home in silence. No music, just the quiet hum of tires on asphalt and the soft rustle of the wind through the Douglas firs lining the road back into Portland. I remember looking over at the passenger seat, empty, as it had been for years now, and thinking, this is fine, this is good. The truth is, I didn't miss Callan. I missed the idea of him, the comfort of shared routines, the illusion of partnership. But the actual man, the one who left when things got real, who let his family belittle me, who resented the very parts of me I was most proud of. No, that man I didn't miss at all. But despite that, his messages didn't stop. For the next few weeks, they came in waves. Always polite, always a little desperate, always carefully worded, as if he were trying to sound composed while slipping through the cracks of something much bigger than regret. I saw you the other night. You looked incredible. I wanted to say something, but I didn't know how. I've been thinking a lot about us, about what I lost. I was wrong. I didn't fight for us. I should have. I didn't block him. Not out of hope or softness, but because a part of me wanted to see it. To witness, maybe, the slow unraveling of the pedestal he'd once stood on. I'd built that pedestal, after all. It seemed only fair I should watch it fall. Around that same time, I started reconnecting with some old friends. One of them, Nira, had just gone through her own divorce. Her husband of 15 years had left her for his coworker. It's awful how those stories start to echo one another after a while. Nira and I began meeting every Thursday for coffee at this small place off NW 23rd called Sterling. We'd sit there for hours talking about work, men, politics, and all the little things that make up a life you weren't expecting to live. You know, she said one morning, stirring her latte, for what it's worth, you dodged something ugly. You don't want a man who competes with you. And she was right. It wasn't just that Callan couldn't handle my ambition, it was that he saw it as a threat. He never celebrated my wins, he endured them. And the more I accomplished, the smaller he made himself feel. I used to think it was my fault, that if I had just dimmed my light a bit, we might have worked. What I know now is this: you don't have to shrink for someone else to feel big. But still, I couldn't deny that the messages stirred something. Not longing, but a kind of curiosity. Who was he now? Has he really changed? Or was this just the same man, looking for shelter now that the weather turned? Out of curiosity, I asked a mutual friend, Joel, how Callan was doing. Honestly, Joel said, pausing with his drink halfway to his mouth. Not great, Naomi's gone, his last show bombed. I think he's realizing that being loved for your potential doesn't mean much when you stop growing. I nodded, but I didn't say anything. That was the phrase I'd clung to for years. Potential. Callan had so much of it. But it was always just out of reach, like a word on the tip of your tongue that never quite comes. And then one morning, I got a message that wasn't from Callan, but from Sienna. Sienna, look, I know we've never gotten along. But can we talk? I stared at that one for a long time. What could she possibly want? I didn't respond immediately. I went about my day, but her message followed me around like a shadow. Later that evening, I poured myself a glass of wine, sat on my balcony, and finally replied. Talk about what exactly? Her response came within minutes. Sienna, I said something cruel to you once. I've thought about it a lot. And I think you deserve an apology. Now that I hadn't expected. Sienna wasn't the apologizing type. She was sharp-edged, proud, and curated down to the last eyelash. The idea that she'd actually been carrying any guilt around, well, it didn't seem like her. You laughed when my marriage ended, Sienna. You called me too ambitious. Another pause. Then, Sienna, and I was wrong. You were just too good for him. He couldn't keep up with you, and we all knew it. I just didn't want to admit it because I was jealous. That was the part I didn't see coming. Jealous. Of me? Sienna, you were everything I wanted to be but was too scared to become. I watched you build your life brick by brick, and it made me feel small. So I lashed out. I'm sorry. I set my phone down and just stared into the skyline for a while. Sometimes, the apologies you never expected hit harder than the betrayals you saw coming. I didn't reply to her right away. I didn't know what to say. What do you say to someone who finally sees the damage they did, but only years after the house has already burned down? But something inside me, call it grace, maybe, or just weariness, decided not to hold on to that anger anymore. Later that night, I wrote back, "Thanks for saying that. It means something. I don't need anything else from you. I just hope you find whatever it is you're really chasing." And I left it at that. As for Callan, he never stopped sending messages, though they grew shorter. Less poetic, more real. "Hope you're well. You look happy. I miss hearing your laugh." I didn't delete them. But I didn't answer either. Maybe that's the most powerful thing we can do sometimes, not slam the door, not scream through it, but simply let it stay closed. Quietly, firmly, not out of revenge, but because we finally know we deserve better. Time passed, and the messages from Callan slowly faded like a scent you forget you were ever surrounded by. I started seeing someone new, not in the storybook sense. No violins, no whirlwind, just steady. His name's Mason, a landscape architect. Kind, self-aware, not remotely threatened by my career. The first time we had dinner at my place, he looked around and said, "You've built yourself a beautiful life here. You should be proud." I remember blinking at him like he'd just said something revolutionary. Because the truth is, I had built it. Every lamp, every pillow, every late night at the office, every solo trip. All of it was mine. Mine, not because I had to do it alone, but because I chose to stop waiting for someone to catch up. About 6 months into dating Mason, I got an invitation. Sienna was hosting a gallery opening. Apparently, she'd started investing in local art spaces, publicity for her real estate work, no doubt. The event was for a new series called Resonance, featuring local artists with stories about rebirth, transition, and power reclaimed. The kicker? Callan's name was on the artist list. I stared at the email for a long time. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even curious. I was amused. Life, it seemed, had a knack for throwing me full-circle moments. And this was too poetic to ignore. I asked Mason if he'd come with me. "Only if you promise I won't have to pretend to like interpretive sculpture," he teased. That night I wore red. Not for drama, not for them, just for me. A deep, elegant wine-colored dress that fit like it was made for the moment. We walked into the gallery together, and within 2 minutes I saw them both. Sienna was at the front, all smiles and social polish. She saw me and her face twitched just slightly. She nodded once, then turned back to her guest. And Callan, he was standing near one of his pieces, something abstract, dark, swirling with muted tones. He looked older, thinner, not broken, not miserable, just faded, like a painting left too long in the sun. He noticed me before I noticed him. His eyes met mine, and for a second he gave a small nod. It wasn't pleading. It wasn't regretful, just acknowledging. We didn't speak. I didn't need him to say anything. I had all the closure I needed the day I held up that phone to Sienna's face. Instead, I walked with Mason through the gallery. We sipped white wine. We looked at the art. We talked about everything except the people in the room watching me from the corners of their eyes. But the revenge part, the sweet, quiet revenge, came near the end of the night. I was chatting with a woman near one of the installations when a man tapped my shoulder. Late 40s, well-dressed, charming smile. A curator from Seattle, apparently. He'd overheard me talking about international exhibitions and asked if I had a background in art finance. I told him I'd worked with arts nonprofits through my firm. We talked for 10 minutes. Sienna watched the whole thing. Her eyes narrowed ever so slightly. Because that was her game, networks, influence, status. I could practically feel the gears turning behind her eyes. Who was I connected to? Why was a curator seeking me out? What am I doing now? That's when I excused myself from the conversation, walked over to the guest book at the front table, and scribbled a quick note under the comments section. Then Mason and I left. I didn't look back. Later that night I got a text from a number I didn't recognize at first. It was Sienna. Sienna, you looked good tonight. People were asking about you. What are you working on these days? I smiled, didn't reply, closed my phone and set it on the nightstand. The next morning, I got an email from that same curator. Great meeting you last night. I'd love to discuss a collaborative project between our gallery and your firm, especially around supporting female artists reclaiming their narratives. I replied, setting up lunch the following week. Because here's the thing about revenge, it doesn't have to be cruel. It doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes, it's just showing up in the room they never thought you belonged in, and being the one people want to talk to when they walk in. Callan lost me long before the divorce was final. He just didn't know it yet. And Sienna, she tried to clip my wings because she'd never learned how to use hers. But me, I didn't just fly, I built the runway. So no. I didn't scream, I didn't gloat, I didn't get even. I got better. And there's no sweeter revenge than that.